We are back with Jo having this fantastic conversation. And we already spoke about previously in the last episode. If you didn't check it out, you need to go back and listen to it right now about the power of being an in-betweener, leveraging that to create dreams and not letting what looks like limiting circumstances or moments stop you from being your full, beautiful self. And we landed on the power of taking imagination and making it actionable into, I want to talk about journaling. That's where we want to come to next, because this is something you've unlocked that I'm sure if we asked, 5-year-old Jo, do you want to have a journaling company? I don't know. And when I saw you on Netflix, I was thinking she's going to have a journaling company. I mean, I just didn't see that. I think it's amazing. So I want to know, step one, what is it about journaling? When did you start journaling and what do you love about it? Let's just start there and then we'll build from there.
There's so much that I have to say about this topic. If you don't journal, you might actually journal. Taking notes is a form of journaling.
Yes.
Sending voice notes to yourself, text, whatever to yourself. Writing anything down is documentation. But if you do it consistently and intentionally and you start to have a dialogue with yourself, that is when the magic starts to happen. So like I mentioned in the last episode, I was always very introverted and very quiet because I grew up in this weird situation where plucked out of my hometown in Brazil in a sea of kids that spoke English. I didn't speak English. There were few outlets where I could express myself. I was the youngest of 3 kids as well. And my mom was very heavy in the personality department. So was my sister, and my brother was very creative. There was so many things that I felt like made it hard for me to find my own voice. And so I would start talking and my sister would get so annoyed that she was like, here, write it down in your journal. I'm tired of hearing about your silly crushes. So actually, I have to thank my big sister for being so annoyed at me that she was like, I don't want to hear it. Just write it down. So there I was with a black page journal with gel pens writing like, this boy, I think he likes me. And, I started using the journal as an outlet because I didn't have many friends. I wasn't this popular girl. And so when I had a crappy day, I would go home and write at least 3 things that made my day okay. I was like, what can I think about that would make me happy? And this was this process of gratitude journaling that I didn't even know was a thing. I was around 8 years old. And then I started experiencing first time things, like first time that you really fall in love or first time you take a little trip. And my thought process was, I want to document this. I was a teenager. I want to document this because I don't think I'll ever feel this again. And so I want to be able to create a time machine for myself to come back with as much detail as possible and relive these memories. And that's when I started considering myself a memory hoarder because I've always loved a good memory. I was that kid that would write letters to my friends and my goal was to make them cry because I really just loved emotion. I was very emotional. My nickname in my house was Little Butter because I would always melt. I was always crying. And journaling allowed me to put everything on a page, take the weight from my chest, and then, even better, relive things that I thought were important over and over again. As I grew up, around 1920, I had already kept journals. I ended up studying abroad in Paris, and I was so broke that all I could afford to eat were 20-cent baguettes and like a salad at Monoprix, which is like the grocery store. But every single day, I would write every day. And this was the first time that I wrote every single day in a journal. At the end of the day, whether the day was exciting or boring, I knew that I wanted to capture this journey of studying abroad in a new country, speaking this new language. And it felt like my experience in traveling was 50% what I lived and 50% my digestion of what I lived. So then journaling became a way to process my life and make it actually a better life for myself. So it was this crazy, beautiful cycle of goodness that I was like, of course I want to keep doing this. So I always did it. I always journaled behind the scenes. And at the time, I started making videos for this YouTube channel that was my first main business. And this YouTube channel was just documenting travels with a college buddy. We were always joking, making people laugh and talking about travel tips. And it was very surface level, but fun. And when the camera turned off, I had all of these big, deep feelings and all of these insights that I wanted to capture. And this is where I would journal. So I started living almost like a double life because publicly I was this fun, fluffy Jo making, funny jokes and booty dropping in front of the Eiffel Tower. And then when the camera turned off, I was this deep thinking. I wanted this. I yearned for connection. I yearned for depth. And I never shared that publicly because the channel actually started to be very successful. And so when we gained the traction of Jo Franco on camera is this fun, fluffy girl. Why in the world would I ever share my deepest, darkest insides of vulnerability and depth and documentation? So I kept it to myself. But all the while, that entire decade of journeying throughout the world and all of these web series that I did and on-camera things and business fails and triumphs, all of that is in my journals. I never talked about it. I booked the Netflix show in 2020, and that was the first big, streaming platform kind of thing I did. And when you're put in a position of traveling around with two strangers that now you have to figure out who you are, who am I in a trio? When you see a show, usually it's two people and you have a design and a real estate, or you have a man and a woman. But here we are, we're salsa dancing with two people. So we're three people salsa dancing. This is not a dynamic that shows are built for. When you think about camera time, a show is only so long. And if you have three people, you need to have very specific roles. We didn't have that. I was the wild card role. I was literally the wild card role. Because if you think, you had Megan, she was design. Luis was real estate. And I was the travel girl. But this is a show about houses. And yes, we're traveling, but it's a show about houses.
Yeah.
And there I was again in the in-between, having to figure out who I was. Really big it was a struggle. Journaled all along, journal. Who am I? What is my archetype? What is this? I would work my thoughts out on the page. COVID hits. I don't have a Netflix job guaranteed anymore. I don't have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers, and I am quarantining just like the rest of the world. And that was the first time in 12 years of making a content-driven career that I decided, let me just share a photo of my journal entry. And this wasn't work that I had designed to share. It was crappy chicken scratch journal entry of like dramatic thoughts about the pandemic. Somebody messaged, was like, Jo, start journaling with us. Let's do a journal challenge. It's like, okay, let's start tomorrow. Every day I would wake up, ask a super deep question that I wanted to answer. I would say, hey guys, here's your prompt for the day. If you're brave, send me a photo of your journal and then I'll send my entry and then the next day's prompt. This goes on for 90 days. And this was so crazy, Kelley, because we were on the hiatus of the show while we were waiting for the pandemic. And I had never found such a fulfilling way of making content because it was genuinely true to me. Like that was the Jo that I had hidden because the other fluffy Jo was finding success. But this time I'm like, who cares how many people are watching? I'm having a genuine, deep conversation with these people on the internet who are sharing these beautiful journal entries and telling me that they've never felt better about themselves, telling me that in the darkest history that we've all lived during a global pandemic, that they're finding a reason to wake up in the morning and that they're getting to know themselves and that they feel comforted by this online space where people are brave enough to share their innermost thoughts in the name of growth. I was like, nope, this is it. This is it. This is what I've always loved. Whether I'm traveling or creating businesses, it's always rooted in introspection. It's always rooted in my relationship with myself. And I find journaling is an amazing tool to document not only the messy middle and be compassionate about that. Because when you read back, a lot of people ask me like, Jo, aren't you cringing when you read back? I'm like, absolutely not. You know what I'm thinking? That past Jo honored her thoughts and inner voice enough to invest time in documenting. And she is therefore respecting her voice enough to make time to document this. So whether what I write is cringy or not, I'm going to be compassionate because that person has enough self-respect to make themselves a priority enough to spend 5 minutes writing. So it's just like this amazing, beautiful tool that now, 4 years later, I created Jo Club, which stands for the journaling company. And I have gorgeous, beautiful souls in my community of journalers. We do global retreats. And the whole point of this is to remind people that it's impossible to build a fulfilling, abundant life if you don't have a relationship with yourself. And journaling and being compassionate and documenting and rereading and seeing the patterns in yourself and honoring the goodness, whether it's gratitude journaling or writing lists of things you want to remember, that's all an incredible way to grow closer to yourself and continue to become the person you want to be.
Yeah. As you said all that, which is incredible, a lot of like, all these thoughts are coming through my head as you're talking. And it really is a way to make the invisible visible and to make your invisibility visible. And I think so many people, I can completely, again, I was meant to meet you. Same thing. I've been journaling since I was 9, and it was just a way to make myself visible, like real. Like it's just like I have thoughts and feelings, and nobody wants to hear them for many good reasons. So they also involve like glitter pens and boys. But it's like nobody wants to hear that. But I want to talk about it, and I want to write a story, and I want to do, and journaling has taken many different forms in my life. But one of it has always been coming back to the thread that I am hearing from you, and I'm realizing as you're speaking, it's like it was a way to make myself real. Like, I am Kelley. These are Kelley's words. She existed in a time and had thoughts and feelings, and mine are very emo and cringe, as well. I call them the emo years and the emo diaries. I'm like, these are very emo. We need to take it just 2 steps down in the emos feelings. But at the same time, it was like, but I existed. I was here. I lived. And then it's like, I grew. I got to also get it's so refreshing to see like, oh, look, Kelley at 16 and Kelley at 26 is a whole different person. And then again at 36, like, it's just the growth that is happening and the evolution and the healing is like documented before your eyes. And so I think that's what makes it so important. And it allows you. And then again, like the second part is like, without the introspection, there can't be more. It's like you have to process. Successful people, happy people process and then move forward. And there's got to be a way to do that. And it's maybe for other people it's different. Maybe they paint, maybe they do other things, they write songs. But journaling for me is like the easiest thing you can do, the most free thing. You have a pen and a napkin, you have something to write on, it's there. And so I want to have you just say for folks, like, what are some quick things to tell people of like to start if they haven't journaled, like where to start and what to start with, maybe like a prompt. And then if they have been journaling but fallen off, to reconnect to it.
So I feel like the first thing is don't take it too seriously, because people think journaling needs to be this daily routine where you journal for an hour a day. Like, I don't like that. Some days I journal for the whole day. Other days I journal for 3 minutes. Some days I might not even journal, but then I catch up another day. So number one is make it whatever you need it to be, and don't be so hard on yourself. It could be fun. It could be voice notes. It could be pictures, right? Like, it doesn't need to be this thing, because you must design journaling to make sense for you and how you enjoy documenting. The other thing is, if you don't know where to start, I would say one of my favorite things is writing a list of things that I want to remember. And I started doing this on trips, because I would be on the streets and see something funny or see something inspiring or laugh because of an inside joke that kind of came up about, the trip. And so I would just sit and be like, oh no, I need to remember these things. And then I would read back. And then it became a tool to also connect to the people that I was with. So I'd be like, remember that funny thing? Haha, here's a picture of my journal. Everybody wants to be friends with the journaler, because the journaler preserves the best memories in the group. So if anything, you can make this not only a tool to connect better with yourself, but to the people in your life that you say to them, hey, I honor this moment enough to document it. How cool is that? So a list of things you want to remember. A gratitude list is an easy, great way, especially when you're in a funk and you find that you're in a negative thought spiral. A great exercise is write as many things that you're grateful for. Start with 10, but try to go to 100. And when you go to 100, you'll be like, wow, I forgot about how cool it is to stare at blades of grass moving. Like, you just start seeing this meaning, profound meaning in even the tiniest things. The way that I see journaling and the way that I've created Jo Club is almost like we're a pharmacy of journaling. I'll be like, come with your ailment and I will think of 14 different exercises and prompts. And the reason why I love prompt journaling specifically is because when you free flow journal, like stream of consciousness journaling is an amazing way to get thoughts on the page. But sometimes we get into spirals where we just go dark. But if I ask you a prompt, it's going to give you some guardrails. And it's like, okay, let's start with this. So another really cool exercise, and I do this on my retreats, is I call it dumping the purse, where I give you sentence starters and set a timer for 3 minutes. And you have to write as many sentences with that starter as you can possibly write, even if you repeat the same sentence, because then you're going to kind of take inventory of what's going on. So you can start sentences with like, I crave, I feel, I enjoy, I look forward to, I intend to. So keeping yourself in guardrails while still giving yourself that freedom is also a great exercise to dip your toes in.
That's great. I think these are great prompts. I hope people are taking notes and using it for later for journaling, and understanding that the outcome of journaling is very healing. It's a very healing process. But you don't have to go into it being like, I must write in a way that I will be healed. You can write, this funny thing happened and I want to document the funny thing that happened on this trip, right? I started also journaling when I traveled and be like, I don't care what happens every day when I'm gone, I'm going to journal about it. And I found that even when things were tough, because I love traveling, I could go back and see those funny moments or that story or be like, oh yeah, that was crazy. That happened. Or I met this person. Now I want to go say hi to them because I made a friend on this trip and I haven't talked to them in a while. Like, let me go reach out and see how they're doing. It doesn't have to start with that serious of an intent, right? But it is going to produce that serious of an outcome. Like you are going to have some version of healing, even if it's just a collection of fun memories, down to seeing your growth, making space. Like writing releases, and it releases joy, and then it like also boomerangs back to you, right? It releases whatever pain you're going through, so you can be like, oh, I'm not in that space anymore. And it comes back to you to be like, oh, I've moved on, I've grown, look at me. This doesn't devastate me anymore. Whatever it is starting from that place and building. And in the building is going to be this beautiful outcome. And I love that your life has been like a zigzag, which I also love talking to women whose lives zigzags. I feel like very, selfishly, I zigzag. I want to see other zigzaggers. Like, I want to see people over like, what? You started here and now you're over here. How'd you do that? But I love that it's still there's always a through line through all the zigs and the zags. And it always comes back to like when you find people, particularly when they're at like 20 and they're a little older, they're living the most aligned version of themselves at that moment, right? And it's like, okay, I've come to this place that like all of the story of you makes sense, even though it's like I started doing content and traveling and learning languages. And now my biggest passion, it's not the only passion yet, but one of them is the Jo Club and what that has brought, which intersects travel and all the other things and languages. So very, very, very cool. I hope people are listening and check out the Jo Club and check out you. But we're not done yet. We're not done because we always close with joy. And so our last piece of our conversation with you, Jo, is going to be like, what brings you joy and how do you protect it? So stay tuned as we finish, sadly, this flew by, our conversation with Jo Franco and talk about what brings her joy.